Okay, how's it going, y'all? So today we're gonna read some Mao Zedong from April to June 1938. It's from his book Dialectical Materialism, 1938. So there's two main chapters here with several different sections, and I'm gonna try to read multiples of these sections at a time because of their links. And this first one I'll read here is Chapter 1, Idealism and Materialism, and we're going to read Section 1, The Struggle Between Two Armies in Philosophy. So let's go ahead and get into this. The struggle between two armies in philosophy. The whole history of philosophy is the history of the struggle and the development of two mutually opposed schools of philosophy, idealism and materialism. All philosophical currents and schools are manifestations of these two fundamental schools. All philosophical theories have been created by men belonging to a definite social class. The ideas by these men have moreover been historically determined by a definite social existence. All philosophical doctrines express the needs of a definite social class and reflect the level of development of the productive forces of society and the historical stage in men's comprehension of nature. The social origins. The social origins of idealism and materialism lie in a social structure marked by class contradictions. The earliest appearance of idealism was the product of the ignorance and superstition of savage and primitive man. Then with the development of the productive forces and the ensuing development of scientific knowledge, it stands to reason that idealism should decline and be replaced by materialism. And yet, from ancient times to the present, idealism has not declined, but on the contrary has developed and carried on a struggle for supremacy with materialism, from which neither has emerged the victor. The reason lies in a division of society into classes. On the one hand, in its own interest, the oppressing class must develop and reinforce its idealist doctrines. On the other hand, the oppressed classes, likewise, in their own interest, must develop and reinforce their materialist doctrines. Both idealism and materialism are weapons in the class struggle, and the struggle between idealism and materialism cannot disappear so long as classes continue to exist. Idealism, in the process of its historical development, represents the ideology of the exploiting classes and serves reactionary purposes. Materialism, on the other hand, is the world view of revolutionary class in a class society. It grows and develops in the midst of an incessant struggle against the reactionary philosophy of idealism. Consequently, the history of the struggle between idealism and materialism in philosophy reflects the struggle of interests between the reactionary class and the revolutionary class. A given philosophical tendency is in the last analysis a manifestation in particular guise of the policy of the social class to which the philosophers belong. The distinguishing characteristic of Marxist philosophy, i.e. dialectical materialism, is its effort to explain clearly the class nature of all social consciousness, including philosophy. It publicly declares a resolute struggle between its own proletarian nature and the idealist philosophy of the propertied class. Moreover, it subordinates its own special and independent tasks to such general tasks as overthrowing capitalism, organizing and building a proletarian dictatorship, and edifying a socialist society. So we're going to go to section 2 here. Very quick, it's a very short, quick section. It's the difference between idealism and materialism. Wherein lies the basic difference between idealism and materialism? It lies in the opposite answers given by the two to the fundamental question in philosophy, that of the relationship between spirit and matter, that of the relationship between consciousness and existence. Idealism considers spirit, consciousness, concepts, the subject, as the source of all that exists on earth, and matter, nature and society, the object, as secondary and subordinate. Materialism recognizes the independent existence of matter as detached from spirit and considers spirit as secondary and subordinate. Okay, so this is 3 here. The source of the growth and the development of idealism. Idealism see matter as the product of the spirit. This is turning the real world upside down. Where is the source of the growth and the development of such a philosophy? As mentioned above, the earliest manifestation of idealism was brought about by the superstition and ignorance of primitive savage man. But with the development of production, the separation between manual labor and intellectual labor was responsible for ranking idealism first among currents of philosophical thought. With the development of the productive forces of society, the division of labor made its appearance. The further development of the division of labor saw the emergence of persons devoting themselves entirely and exclusively to intellectual labor. But when the productive forces are still weak, the division between the two does not reach the stage of complete separation. Only after classes and private property appear and exploitation becomes the foundation of the existence of the ruling class do great changes occur. Intellectual labor then becomes the exclusive privilege of the ruling class, while manual labor becomes the fate of the oppressed classes. The ruling class begins to examine the relationship between themselves and the oppressed classes in an upside-down fashion. It is not the laborers who furnish them with means for existence, but rather they who supply the laborers with these means. Hence, they despise manual labor and develop idealist conceptions. To eliminate the distinction between manual labor and intellectual labor is one of the preconditions for eliminating idealist philosophy. The social root that makes possible the development of idealist philosophy lies principally in the fact that this kind of philosophical consciousness is the manifestation of the interests of the exploiting class. The final decline of idealism will come with the elimination of classes, after the establishment of a communist society. The source that enables idealism to develop and deepen and gives it the strength to struggle with materialism must be sought in the process of human knowing. When men think, they must use concepts. This can easily cause our knowledge to be split into two aspects: reality, which is of an individual and particular character, and concepts, which are of a general character. In the nature of things, the particular and the general are inseparably linked. Once separated, they depart from objective truth. To separate the general from the particular and to view the general as objective reality and the particular merely as the form in which the general exists. This is the method adopted by all idealists. All idealists put consciousness, spirit, or concepts in place of objective reality existing independently from human consciousness. They cannot point out the materialist truth according to which consciousness is limited. Consciousness is limited by matter, but believe that only consciousness is active, whereas matter is only an inert, composite entity. Urged on, moreover, by their own class nature, the idealists then use every method to exaggerate the activity of consciousness, developing this aspect unilaterally. Idealism in economics exaggerates beyond measure a non-essential aspect of exchange, raising the law of supply and demand to the status of the fundamental law of capitalism. Idealist historians regard heroes as the makers of history. Idealist politicians regard politics as omnipotent. Idealist military leaders practice in methods of desperate combat. Idealist revolutionaries advocate Blanchism. The diehards say that the only way to revive our nation is to restore the old morality. All this results from exaggerating subjective factors beyond measure. Pre-Marxist materialism, mechanistic materialism, did not stress the thought process in the development of knowledge, but regarded thought merely as the object of action, as the mirror that reflects nature. Only dialectical materialism correctly shows the active role of thought in the same time points out the limitation imposed upon thought by matter. It points out that thought arises from social practice and the same time actively shapes practice. Only this kind of dialectical theory of the unity of knowledge and action can thoroughly vanquish idealism. So this is section 4. The origin of the inception and the development of materialism. The recognition that matter exists independently and apart from consciousness in the external world is the foundation of materialism. Man created this foundation through practice. Obliged to submit to natural forces and capable of using only simple tools, primitive man cannot explain the surrounding phenomena and hence sought help from spirits. This is the origin of religion and idealism. But in a long-range process of production, men came into contact with surrounding nature, acted upon nature, changed nature, and created things to eat, to live in, and to use, and adapted nature to the interests of man, and caused man to believe that matter has an objective existence. In the social existence of humanity, reciprocal relationships and influences arise between individuals. In a class society, there is moreover a class struggle. The oppressed class considers the circumstances and estimates its strength, and then makes its plans. When they succeed in the struggle, the members of this class are convinced that their views are not the product of fantasy, but the reflection of the objectively existing material world. Because the oppressed class fails when it adopts the wrong plans and succeeds by correcting its plans, it learns to understand that it can achieve its purpose only when its subjective plans rest upon the accurate understanding of the material nature of the objective world and the fact that the objective world is governed by laws. The history of science furnishes man with proof of the material nature of the world and of the fact that it is governed by laws, and helps man to see the futility of the illusions of religion and idealism and to arrive at materialist conclusions. In sum, the history of man's practice comprises the history in his struggle with nature, the history of the class struggle, the history of science. Owing to the necessity to live and struggle, men have thought about the reality of matter, and its laws have proved the correctness of materialism, and have found the necessary intellectual tool for their struggle, materialist philosophy. The higher the level to which social production develops, the greater the development of the class struggle, and the more scientific knowledge reveals the, quote, secrets of nature, the greater the development and consolidation of materialist philosophy. Thus, man can be delivered gradually from the dual and crushing oppression of nature and society. Okay, yeah, so that's chapter 1 of this, and that is Idealism and Materialism from his book Dialectical Materialism. So, the next part we're going to read is Dialectical Materialism. That's the next chapter. So, yeah, well, thank y'all for, tuning in. Y'all follow me online, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, Medium, all of these, Marxist Saw. Follow me on there. Have a great day.